for anybody that's coming a little bit late, if you plan on coming up during a public hearing, you need to sign up on the sign-up sheet on the back if you plan to talk.
However, the chair will give you an opportunity to speak even if you haven't signed up.
Yeah, okay. No, but just telling you how we normally do it. Well, it looks like it's close enough. If anybody else wanders in, they'll just wander. You can come in. Oh, he's going the other way. Okay, Karate Kids. We're going to call together the order. Call the order in a roll call of tonight's session of the Woodland Park Planning Commission. And our director is going to do that.
And this is July 24th, 2014. Thank you. Mr. DeVoe?
Here.
Mr. Watson?
Here.
Ms. Mattingly? Here. Mr. Mello?
Here.
Ms. Probst? Here. Mr. Rollinger?
Here.
Mr. Schrader?
Here.
Mr. Stannard?
Here.
And Mr. Vogel?
Here.
We have our entire Planning Commission here this evening. Thank you.
If you'd all stand up and join us with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Anybody have any corrections or additions they would like to make? If not, we need a motion and a second.
I motion to approve the minutes from last week.
Second.
All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The next item 4 is request or public hearings. The first item A is CUP 14-003, Fred's Towing, tabled from July 10th, 2014.
Yes, Chair, thank you and good evening. Planning Commission, thanks for coming and hearing our important cases this evening. Tonight, our applicant, we still have not yet received information from Colorado Department of Transportation. We're awaiting, if you will recall from last meeting, it was tabled due to waiting for more information and analysis from their review. We have not received that yet. Have followed up with them on a couple of occasions, and we're just still waiting. Applicant is also wanting some additional time to think about some considerations with regard to the case, some details. So if we could table this to the next meeting, that would be our recommendation, to table it to August 14th, 2013. Or 2014. Excuse me. I'm a year off.
We need a motion to table.
I would make a motion to table CUP 14-003.
Second.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, item B. SUB 14-005, Paradise of Colorado. Request for the city's review and approval of a 2-year extension of the Top of Paradise filing number 1 preliminary plat, also known as Paradise of Colorado, for 29 single-family lots remaining on 56 acres, generally located northeast of Thunder Ridge Drive and Majestic Parkway, as requested by Park State Bank and Trust. One of the things before Mrs. Riley starts, just to give some of you an idea how we go through this, for your information, staff will present this, then we'll have the applications presentation. Then we'll ask questions of the staff or applicant. Then we'll open it for public comment. That's your turn. Okay. Come on, do that. We'll close that. And then we'll continue on for any final questions and deliberate that. Just want so everybody knows what the game plan's going to be. Mrs. Riley.
Sally, before you start, could we get that door closed?
Sure.
Thank you.
And Dave will also catch the lights for us as well. Thank you. This is actually the fifth request for an extension for this subdivision. Top of Paradise preliminary plat, filing number 1, also known as Paradise of Colorado. And this is the zoning map that shows the 200 acres that was master planned back in 1999 with single-family residential. And following the master plan, it's outlined in green, is the 200 acres that traverses from behind the middle school down to King's Crown. And at that time, there was also a preliminary plat that was approved, and the first filing of homes was final platted, and that was 29 lots. There's another 29 lots that's just to the east of this area of Majestic Parkway and Thunder Ridge. So this is shows you on the zoning map the property that we're speaking to, and the owner of the property now is Park State Bank and Trust. Here this evening is Chuck Mahoney, who is representing the bank and making the request for the extension for 2 years to 2016. This is the amended master plan that shows the layout of the lots and the roadways. The preliminary platted area for the 59 lots is shown in red. So this amended master plan is actually valid through next year in 2015. And if they want to maintain this master plan, they'll come back requesting an extension of the master plan. So you may see this next year. Here is a copy of the preliminary plat that was approved back in '99, and outlined in blue is the area that has been final platted. There's a few of the lots that have been developed or built upon, but the slowdown in the economy and some other reasons has caused this not to be built out. So the bank is holding off on final platting this section of additional lots. I might note that the city's new water tank sits up at the end of this cul-de-sac, and it's been a wonderful addition to the community, especially during the Waldo Canyon fire. It was great having this additional water tank in the community, and that property has been deeded over to the city, as well as all the easements that were associated with the areas outside the final plat. So with that, staff believes that this request is reasonable to extend the preliminary plat to 2016. The slow recovery to the economic downturn has impacted the bank's absorption rate, so it's necessary to allow additional time to extend the validity of the preliminary plat. One of the things that we do look at, has there been any changes in the subdivision regulations that would cause us to feel that this preliminary plat is no longer valid? The only change that we have had is that we've added cluster housing standards to Title 17, but these standards would not affect this preliminary plat. As a result, staff recommends approval of this extension, and should you approve this tonight, it will move forward to the City Council's docket on August 7th. I'd like to now turn it over to the applicant, Mr. Mahoney, for any questions that you may have.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Chuck Mahoney. I'm here representing Park State Bank and Trust. As you know, we're not in the real estate business, but we have this. Right now, the bank is actively marketing and pursuing the lower 29 lots. We have 19 left. We anticipate 2 housing starts this calendar year yet. So the activity, there's an uptick there. We've had some expressed interest in the upper preliminary platted, but we don't have that listed with the Realtor as we do the lower. So what we'd like to do is to apply for an extension to give us some time to develop this, for the market to catch back up with us, and to hopefully come back either with this application of a final plat, or maybe another developer or builder would come back within the 2-year period. That's our outside hope. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, just a pro forma question. When did the bank assume ownership of this?
2010 is my understanding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
At this point, do we have any questions of staff or applicant at this point? Seeing,
I just have one question for staff. Sally, if the applicant had desired more than a 2-year extension, could the applicant have asked for more than 2 years?
They could have, however, we have typically been on a 2-year cycle for these extensions. If they were to come in and final plat even one lot of this next section, they would automatically extend it for another year.
Thank you.
Sally, is there any problem with, extending to 2016 when the master plan expires in 15?
No, there is not. The preliminary plat supersedes the master plan.
It does? Okay.
Yes.
anybody else? David, did we have anybody sign up on the sign-up sheet?
They're probably not for this case. We didn't
We'll ask
separate
for that
them.
way we got it up here.
Okay, good idea.
Okay. Bob, or is it Vicki, are you waiting till the next one? Okay, very good. We will then open the public comment of this case that we're on now. If anybody wants to step forward, talk about it, you don't have to have signed up, and have any comment concerning this extension. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment. I don't think we need any rebuttal from the applicant. Planning Commission, any final questions? Then we would encourage a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve. I don't know what the case is. SUB 14-005, Paradise of Colorado, as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we call the question?
DeVoe,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Mattingly,
Yes.
Mella,
Yes.
Probst,
Yes.
Rollinger,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Stannard,
Yes.
and Vogel.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously, and as mentioned earlier, this moves forward to the City Council's docket to August 7th.
We'll move on to item C, case sub 14-003, Tamarack Tech Park, filing number 5. Request for the city's review and approval of a vacation and replat of Tamarack Tech Park, filing 4 for the purpose of vacating the unimproved Tamarack Court right-of-way and reconfiguring the existing 8 lots containing a total of 25.29 acres located adjacent to Tamarack Parkway and State Highway 67, as requested by the property owners, Mountain Star Investments, LLC, Managing Agent Robert P. Young. So, Ms. Riley?
Thank you.
I think I'll go first.
The cover slide starts with the zoning map of the area that we will be discussing this evening. It is outlined in yellow, the 25 acres that is going to be proposed to be replatted There is a small vacation of the road right-of-way that was never constructed at the end of Tamarack Parkway. And just to locate yourself on the map, the star is the clubhouse for the golf course. So with that, before I begin into the background of this case, I did want to, for the audience benefit, to review the 12 steps that we will be taking for a quasi-judicial case on a hearing. The chairman has read the case into the record. There'll be the staff presentation. Then the applicant will speak about the request. The commissioners can ask questions of the staff and the applicant. The public comment portion of the meeting will be opened. Once everyone has had an opportunity to speak, then that public comment portion will be closed. The applicant has a rebuttal opportunity. Commissioners continue to ask questions. Once they feel they have received all the testimony necessary to make a decision, then they go into deliberation and discuss their opinions, the pros and cons, and then also followed with a motion. I understand that we do have 2 commissioners that live in proximity to this property and would like to make a statement.
Thank you, Madam Director. Due to the proximity of my principal residence to the subject property, I don't believe that I can be impartial in my decision regarding this application, and I would ask to be recused.
Anybody have any objections to Mr. Rollinger's recusal? Okay, we all agree with that? Who's the next person?
I also ask that I be removed from the discussion on this. I live probably less than 300 yards from some of the lots that are being discussed. It is within the line of sight of my deck, and I don't think I could be unbiased in this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Does anybody have any objection to Mr. Schroeder recusing himself? Seeing none, you are excused.
Thank you. And as advised by our city attorney, those members who recuse themselves are required to vacate the council chambers. Thank you. I will move forward then with the background information and begin with the proposal showing an aerial of the existing subdivision, which is filing number 4. What you are considering this evening would be a replat of filing number 4 with the vacation of the road right-of-way that is known as Tamarack Court. It is unimproved. Right now, the improvements that access this property are via Tamarack Parkway. The area outlined in red is the 25 acres. The blue lines show how it is currently platted today with Tamarack Court, and then 8 lots around Tamarack Court, and then 7 lots, and then 1 large 8th lot that encumbers the majority of the property with a Tract A. Just to mention, Tract A was proposed to be the detention facility for drainage. They were going to develop this with one sort of regional detention facility that then would be piped into the Loy Gulch drainage over in the golf course. So this is the existing conditions or the existing entitlement. These properties are all zoned heavy service commercial, light industrial at this point in time. Mr. Lawrence Sharon is here this evening. He is one of the partners and owners of this property and has owned the property for many, many years. He will speak to his dad's investment in this property many years ago. It was part of the U.S. Forest Service. It was known as the Spielman Tract. And Lawrence's dad and other partners were able to trade this property and actually also developed the Tamarack Reserve subdivision, which was part of the Spielman Tract in the 70s and early 80s. This is a picture of the subdivision. On the left side is how filing number 4 is currently platted. It's difficult to read, which is why I use the aerial first. And then on the right side is how it's going to be proposed to be platted, also into 8 lots. But the heavy service light industrial lots are just going to be clustered around the end of the existing cul-de-sac. Lot number 5 is the one that is proposed to be rezoned to multifamily residential suburban. And then lots 6 and 7 are proposed to be rezoned multifamily residential urban. Those are the 2 lots that are adjacent to Highway 67. And then lastly, Lot 8, which is down on the corner of Highway 67 and Tamarack Parkway, would be downzoned from heavy service commercial, light industrial, to neighborhood commercial, which is our lowest impact commercial use on the corner of this intersection. So that is the subdivision as proposed for the vacation and replat of filing number 4. And here again is an aerial of the subject property, and the blue lines represent the new lot configuration. So lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, and lot 3 would be accessed through a common ingress-egress easement. Lot 5 is to the northwest, and it has a common ingress-egress and part of property that abuts or touches the end of the cul-de-sac. Lot 6 is also accessed from the end of the cul-de-sac in 2 points, either at the very northern tip or at this eastern point. Lot 4 is going to remain heavy service commercial light industrial. Lot 7 is proposed for the multifamily, urban density, and then Lot 8 is down on the southeast corner of the intersection. We will be talking about a variance associated with this subdivision, and that variance deals with the required frontage for lots that are zoned heavy service light industrial. They require to be fronted 50 feet on a public road right-of-way. The advantage to this scenario is there are less infrastructure improvements, and yet the access can still be accommodated via a common ingress-egress easement. In our subdivision regulations, City Council has the jurisdiction to grant minor variances to those standards, such as road frontage right-of-way, as long as we are not creating a lot that has no access whatsoever. All 8 of these lots have legal access either through an easement or through abutting the road right-of-way. So just a quick review, we will be asking for a variance for Lot 2 because it does not have 50 feet of frontage. Lot 3 does not have 50 feet of frontage. Lot 5 does not have 40 feet of frontage because when it's zoned multifamily, that requires a 40-foot frontage. Lot 6 I had included in the list. However, when I was putting this slide together, I had not realized that there is 50 feet right here, so we are going to eliminate Lot 6 from that variance. Lot 4, however, is still on that list. Lot 7 does not need a variance because it has frontage between the post office and the fitness center, so it's adequately handled. And of course, Lot 8 has plenty of frontage along Tamarack Parkway. So here's the zoning map, which you can see. The outline in yellow is the subject property. Here is the clubhouse, Highway 67, and Tamarack Parkway. And you can see that this is all zoned for light industrial currently today. These are a few photos of the subject area. First, this is the corner of Tamarack Parkway and Highway 67, which is proposed to become neighborhood commercial, which is technically a down zone. There are few uses that can go on this corner, less intensive uses, mostly office, retail type uses, with a neighborhood commercial. In the upper right is the end of the cul-de-sac that would provide for the access to the majority of these new lots. And then the U.S. Post Office fronts on Tamarack Parkway. And at the end of the cul-de-sac, there is an existing office space for Rampart Surveys already developed. There were only 2 lots out of filing number 4 that were developed when that was platted, and that was the Rampart Surveys and the new fitness center. So surrounding properties to the south is the Tamarack Center Business Center, and this is zoned service commercial, which is one of the highest levels of intensity for commercial uses. Up in the upper right-hand corner is the police station or the police operations center. That is currently zoned public, semi-public. And just to the northwest of the police station is Colorado Springs Christian School, which is zoned heavy service commercial light industrial. And I was shooting into the sun, so you can't really see the fitness center, but that is shown on the lower right, and it is zoned heavy service light industrial. In your packets was the rezoning exhibit that shows how lots 1 through 4 clustered around the end of the cul-de-sac will remain heavy service commercial light industrial. That lot number 5 is proposed for multifamily suburban, and then the 2 lots along Highway 67, multifamily urban, and lastly the corner lot, neighborhood commercial. It's important to understand the definitions of these various zoning classifications when you're making a decision about rezoning. So the definition for heavy service commercial light industrial, which would apply if granted to lots 1, or this is what they are zoned right now. Let me clarify that. They are not going to change. Lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is a category that's intended for more intensive commercial activity, including light industrial or light manufacturing facilities. And we really only have a couple of those types of facilities in Woodland Park right now. You're familiar with Sturman Industries. They are a light manufacturing facility. And then close by is O'Keefe Ceramics. They produce small ceramic parts. And so there are very nicely done light industrial facilities. However, this zone also allows for outside storage. If you had heavy equipment or storage of a facility of equipment and supplies, although the supplies can only be up to 2,000 square feet. You do have to provide for adequate ingress and egress. There shall not be any negative impacts, particularly to the residential uses. So when we look at development proposals for this type of zone, it's very important that they're adequately buffered, and there are fairly intensive setbacks. The height allowance is 35 feet. Setbacks are required to be 25 feet for buildings from the side, rear, front, unless they abut a residential area, and then there is a 50-foot setback. That is for the building. You could put parking and landscaping and other things in those setbacks, but not the building, the structure itself. So for what's being proposed for Lot 5 is the multifamily residential suburban. The key information here is that it is for 2 to 9 dwelling units per acre. It must be fully serviced with water and sewer, which this lot, Tamarack Parkway, does have the extension of those facilities. The area must be located such that it accommodates and addresses impacts for traffic, pedestrian access, parks, schools, commercial centers, and places of employment. The height restrictions are 30 feet. Setbacks required are 25 front and rear, 8 on the sides, and 40 feet of frontage road right-of-way. For multifamily residential urban, which would apply to lots 6 and 7, should the rezoning request be granted, the key density here is 9 to 20 units per acre. They must also be fully serviced by municipal water and sewer, as well as accommodate for the impacts concerning traffic, pedestrian access, parks, schools, commercial centers, places of employment, and it has the same dimensional standards for height of 30 feet and setbacks of 25 front and rear and 8 on the sides and 40 feet of frontage. And lastly, the neighborhood commercial definition calls for general retail, personal services, and office establishments. They're typically located at points of neighborhood entrances, and efficient and safe transportation and pedestrian access is important. We also have in our definition to either elimination or reduction of strip commercial development. So therefore, our design standards kick in, and we envision more of a village-type neighborhood shopping center that may include a cafe, a laundry, or services that could support this area. And the height restrictions are 35 feet with setbacks 25 in the front and rear, 8 on the sides, and 40 feet of frontage. It's important to note that this lot, number 8, is encumbered with a regulated floodplain. So in order for anyone to develop on this lot, it would require for pretty intensive drainage study that they would come before you to request a flood hazard development permit, and that drainage study would show that they are not increasing the base flood elevation, or if they are mitigating that and remapping that floodplain in order to build within the floodplain. So when filing number 4 was approved, there was a preliminary plat that was established, and a preliminary plat is triggered when public improvements extend into the property. With filing number 5, we are not proposing to extend public improvements, but specifically this Tamarack Court had been platted with the final plat, and then there was a plan that there would be many future lots and new roads into this heavy service commercial light industrial tech park. And Mr. Lawrence will speak to how the market has not borne the need or the demand for light industrial property and his reasoning for requesting a change in the zoning. And his justification of that zoning is in your packet. I did want to point out, here is that detention pond that was going to be on this east side of the development. Now the approach to detention and drainage will be on a lot-by-lot basis, which is really how we approach it throughout the city, so that each development will need to accommodate their collection, conveyance, detention, and release of the storm water. In reviewing the final plat, it is similar to the preliminary plat from 2007. It meets the final plat code with the exception of the frontage requirements. So that is why there is a request for the variances to lots 2, 3, and 4 that do not meet the 50-foot frontage, and only lot 5 that does not meet the 40-foot frontage. So that's a minor tweak. There is the common ingress-egress easements that are provided to serve for access points. So these lots are not landlocked. They do have adequate public access to a public street, Tamarack Parkway. So staff recommends the variance. In condition number 1 in your plat, there's a few minor tweaks to the plat of adding drainage to the drainage easements, changing the term master plan to comprehensive plan in the water guarantee, and a few other minor tweaks. It's actually very well done. The plat is very well done. I have added a second condition to this plat, and that is to add a landscape or fence buffer along Highway 67 that will be 25 feet wide. Staff believes that that is important to this development so that no buildings will be in that area, but furthermore, no parking lots or other uses. So a fence and or landscaping will buffer this Highway 67 area adjacent to the multifamily use, and the applicant has agreed to add that to the plat. It is also consistent with what the planned unit development for the golf course was required to do north or up by Lucky Lady Drive. So we believe that that is an important addition to this plat. And so here is the plat that highlights the lots that we're requesting the frontage variance on, as well as the 25-foot buffer for the multifamily tracts along the highway. When we evaluate rezonings, there are no criteria in our code. So we have to ask a few questions about whether it can be serviced, whether it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, whether there's a demand or a need for this zoning change in this location. And so I'm going to step through 6 questions that relate to the rezoning of these parcels. So the first question, is it consistent with the comprehensive plan map? And the comprehensive plan map was adopted in 2010. And at that time, we noted this area to be mixed use, meaning that it could be a combination of commercial, residential, or even within a building there might be a mixed use where you have commercial on the ground floor and residential on the top floor. So we had conversations with the property owners about changing the zoning to this property several years ago, actually 5 years ago or more. And at that time, we were going through the comprehensive plan process. We encouraged the applicant or the property owner to delay any request for their zoning change until the comprehensive plan was adopted. And so it is consistent, does comply with the comprehensive plan map. And then the second question, is it consistent with the goals and objectives? And our comprehensive plan added an entire chapter on housing. The previous master plan only made a couple of references within the body on housing, and yet we know that housing is very critical for a community, that we have a broad spectrum of housing types and choices, and so that housing chapter lays out a lot of demographics and data related to affordable housing, workforce housing, and senior housing. There's a specific land use goal and action that talks about helping the city's housing inventory to become more diverse and less reliant on single family. In fact, only right now we have about 10% of our overall housing stock is multifamily. 90% of our housing stock is single family. Then there is an economic development objective that also speaks to creating a place where we all live, work, and provide a diverse housing options. With this additional multifamily property, acreage, it gives an opportunity for more diverse housing options. The third question is, what is the land demand perspective? And currently there are 55 acres that are zoned multifamily in Woodland Park. That's undeveloped. That includes the current 9 acres that are under construction for the Trail Ridge property. This could potentially add 450 units to the community. And these are properties that are already by right zoned for multifamily. And the 2010 census has our population at 7,200, and we have not really grown much since then. And so we are approximately 57% built out to a planned build-out population of 12,600. And that is really governed by the amount of water capacity that the city has to be able to develop and the water rights. And right now, our projection for planned water is 1,475 acre feet to serve the community. The 450 units could potentially serve 1,100 people. That's based on 2.47 persons per household. The state average for the amount of supply of rental units is usually about 30% of your housing stock. As I mentioned, we're only at 10%, currently approximately 300 units. If the 450 units are added to the existing 300, then we'll have a total of 750 units. That would represent approximately 14% of our housing stock. So we've done a lot of housing studies, and the most recent was an increase, an update in 2011, and it did conclude that a variety of rental products are needed in our community, and especially since we have seen the growth and the relocation of Charis Bible College to our community. These findings were consistent with the Teller County Housing Assessment, and should the Tamarack Tech Park increase or change its zoning, the maximum increase in housing would be another 301 units. So if those were added, then that would approximately represent 20% of our housing stock. Still not at the state average, so we feel that this rezoning would not saturate our multifamily market. Number 4 asks about the appropriateness of multifamily at this location, and that should be multifamily suburban as well as urban. And the opportunity for higher density along Highway 67 on the northern side of our community has both, I think, advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that it is adjacent to the golf course. There's the health club, the elementary school, the post office. So this area and the police department is starting to sort of create a small little neighborhood village, and more serving as a residential area, although there are still those small pockets of heavy service commercial. So it could build out as a very mixed kind of neighborhood should this be approved and a development plan come forward. The disadvantage is that we usually like to see multifamily within walking distance of our downtown, just like the new Trail Ridge apartments are on the trail system. They're about a mile from downtown. So this is a little bit further away. It's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. It is, however, on the Centennial Trail. It is within cycling distance of the downtown. But Woodland Park is not going to sprawl any further north due to the fact that we have a limited water supply. It is not our intent to annex new properties unless those properties are commercial or have a great benefit to Woodland Park, but our policy is not to add or annex property that is residential at this point in time. Number 5 is evaluating whether we have the ability to serve this maximum density within our planned water resources. Every plat has a plat note on it now that says that we do not guarantee water, and that is a safeguard. We have done a vacant lot survey and land use analysis, and right now within our 6.5 square miles, our build out will pretty much utilize almost all the water resources that we are planning on building out. However, we don't know exactly how we are going to build out. The previous subdivision I just spoke of has 190 units. There is a 40-acre tract that may not build out with about 40 units. So they're looking at actually subdividing that into only 5 large tracts. There's a lot of units associated with the golf course, and we don't believe that the golf course is going to build out the way they have planned or they have entitlements to, primarily because of the terrain and that people like larger lots in Woodland Park, especially around the golf course. So we're not exactly sure how the older part of town will infill and build out. So we have the water today to be able to support this, and there is no guarantee that there will be water in the future. But we are trying to do our best to make good decisions today about our future. So we do have a tap management plan that also has a multifamily bank for allocating taps to apartments, and City Council is the one that is authorized to allocate those taps. So if a development proposal comes forward and they don't feel that we should allocate a certain level or number of taps, they have the authority to make that decision. The applicant also is required to reserve those taps with a $200 down payment. So the utilities director did look at this very carefully. Kip Wiley concluded that an increase in residential densities can be supported on the short term because the city does have the water currently to serve these 301 should it develop to that density. However, on the long term, it is difficult to predict if the city will utilize the planned resources, water resources, prior to the build-out of all vacant lands. And I threw in this tap sales chart so you can just get a feel for the ups and downs in taps. This is 1985. This is 2013. The dark line are the single family. The blue line, light blue, is the multifamily. And then the light purple, violet, is commercial taps. So you can see that we have been through a roller coaster of high tap sales in the 80s, then it dropped and in the early 90s, and then went back up through the mid-90s. And this spike in 97 was partially due to the Woodland Village Mobile Home Park, and there were 57 single-family taps that were sold to that Woodland Village Mobile Home Park, which is down by Walmart. But at the same time, this is when the city put in place the tap management plan. And there are so many taps that are set aside each year that are available for builders to be able to use. It's a very responsible approach to managing growth in Woodland Park, so that right now, this year, there are, I believe it's 90 single-family taps, but you can see over the last 7 or so years, we are barely hitting maybe 4 or 5 single families. But that market will recover. We have 555 vacant lots right now in the community that are platted. Of course, they're not on the market for sale, but there is plenty of room for growth. We are at about 50%, 57% of build out. And there is right now a demand and pressure for more multifamily units. So the last question we have is, do we have the capacity to serve this area, this rezoning, with wastewater? And right now our utilities director is going out to design an expansion to the wastewater treatment plant, which you all know is located just north of the golf course. And this property gravity flows to the wastewater treatment plant, and that expansion is planned to serve a population of 14,100. So there is plenty of capacity now and in the future for this zoning. So with that, to wrap this up, the staff is recommending approval And there are two motions this evening related to this. The first motion is related to the subdivision for Tamarack Tech Park Filing 5 with the variances for the 4 lots. For frontage, the minor corrections to the plat, and adding the 25-foot landscaping and/or fencing buffer on lots 6 and 7 adjacent to Highway 67. And then lastly, staff also recommends approval of the rezoning as proposed. So thank you for your patience in bearing with that long explanation. Rezonings are interesting cases, so there is a lot to think about, a lot to discuss, and I would like to now, if I may, Mr. Chair, turn it over to the applicant.
Please.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Lawrence Sheeran. I represent Mountain Star Investments, LLC. I provided a brief history in your packet of the property, so I'll refrain from doing that again. I'd like to just hit some of the high points of the past 5 years. Sally mentioned we've been discussing something like this. Initially, Beth Cosley, then director of the EDC, recommended against a zone change because she felt that this type of zoning would be useful to the community and that she could find a buyer that had this type of zoning need. After about 1.5 to 2 years of searching for that type of a buyer, she came to the conclusion that probably was not going to happen here in Woodland Park, and that was our experience also with the initial Phase 4. We only sold 2 lots, but we sold them in-house to appease the bank at that time. So what we'd like to try to do here is just have a little bit more variety for sale out there. And in the past, we have been approached people who are interested in building assisted senior living facility as well as workforce housing projects. And everybody that has come to talk to us about it has asked us about the entitlement on the property. And this has been a big problem. The process, it's not known whether or not this rezoning will even happen tonight. So people that need a certain type of zoning that's not available, they're not willing to stick around to have that process carry forward. So what we're trying to do here tonight is to get some of this property zoned to where if we did have another opportunity with somebody who wanted to do something like a workforce housing or senior apartment, it's entitled for it. Granted, that doesn't mean that a project would get approved. That would have to go through a separate process. But we feel that if we had these zoning designations in place, that we would have a little bit more success moving the land. So I'd just like to take any questions that you might have.
Anybody?
So you don't have anybody on tap at this point?
I currently do not have anybody that I could name to you in good faith and say this person wants to come in tomorrow morning and do it. The people that we have had discussions with, this has been going on a couple of years ago. As Sally also mentioned, we agreed to hold off on this process until the comprehensive plan was put into place. So this is going back 3 and 4 years now.
Thank you.
Sally, where is the single-family residential existing structures? On that one map, can you show
Sure.
where they are?
Sure.
In
I think if
reference to this?
We can go back to the aerials in the front. So the subject property currently has no single family, nor is it proposed for any single family. And the adjacent property to the west is part of the golf course planned unit development. And this is being built out in duplexes. And then there is the fairway for 7 and 8, hole 7 and 8. And then there is single family further to the west on the other side of the fairways. To the north is the driving range, and further north and east, this is the Tamarack Reserve, single-family subdivision, and then Sunnywood is toward the southeast area of this tract, and then to the total south is the Tamarack Business Center. So single-family is either across the highway or across the fairways.
Nothing adjacent.
Nothing adjacent.
Thank you. I'm going to keep asking questions, so you guys interrupt me if you have some. One of the things that kind of concerns me a little bit with heavy service commercial industry, that was pretty much by itself back there. Okay. What it seems like we're doing is we're bringing in a lot of residential, and then right in the center of that, we still have the potential for heavy service commercial, heavy industry, where it's not separated anymore. If we put workforce housing or we put any kind of housing in there, there's the chance that something that would be zoned for heavy industry could come right in there and develop that. And in the case of our zoning, that would include adult bookstores, because we put them in that a long time ago. So I'm just concerned that we've kind of isolated heavy industry in one spot, and now we're changing that so that in the heart of all that residential can be heavy industry. I'm just wondering the logic behind doing that.
Well, some of the logic came from the city's desire to retain some heavy service commercial. Initially, they wanted to retain all of the heavy service commercial, and what we've seen go in there, police station, a school, a fitness facility, a surveying company, and a post office, none of which really qualifies for heavy service commercial, but fits well with those uses. So, sure, I suppose that you could end up with a heavier industry in there, but generally the heavy service commercial users in there have been very compatible with the neighborhood, and I think we can all recognize that somebody who really wanted to do a heavy service commercial and manufacturing type facility would be much better served near a railway line and interstate highway than up in a nice mountain community like Woodland Park.
So if this developed, I could see your group coming back and wanting the rest of that for residential as well, if that comes to fruition?
Over time, that may be the case. Again, I think that the thinking on leaving some of it heavy service commercial now was to satisfy a potential need that the city may have. We may not, we don't know who that's going to be. We can't guess. But there, if I'm not mistaken, Sally, there's only one other location in town with the heavy service commercial designation that's vacant. So the city was a little bit reluctant to see this much of it go away. And then the residential component, multifamily, not single-family homes.
Okay. Questions, anybody else?
My questions are for Sally whenever that's...
The density that you planned on one of those was 2 to 8 dwelling units per acre, and the other one is 9 to 20, but the size of the properties are very, very comparable.
Yes.
Why the difference?
I would have preferred actually multifamily urban density zoning on all 3 parcels, but in discussions with Sally, we felt that it would be more palatable to the community to keep the density down on the 1 parcel. The higher density zoning requests, mainly for a workforce housing or a senior housing facility that would be at a certain percentage of average median income. And the 2 to 8 units to the acre is not conducive to something that you're trying to hit a less fortunate, if you will, portion of the population. You have to be able to get the densities up in order to get the rents down.
Understand that. Okay. Your turn.
Thank you. Sally, on page 7 of your report, this is where you describe the, under number 3, the delta between the current multifamily percent of the state average of 30%, which is 10%, and ultimately going to 20%. So just a question I have, and it's just for you and for us to think about, is that's fully doubling the percent in one area. So, we're talking about a rather high concentration, potentially. If we go from 10% current multifamily, 300 units, and at the bottom of the page it says an additional 301 would push it to 20%. So that's just a consideration in terms of the scale that's being proposed. And then just a related question, it just has to do with water and Kip Wiley's memorandum. So in his second paragraph where he describes the city will not be able to guarantee water to all vacant lots as density increase on those lots were not planned for larger densities. So the question is, it has a precedent-setting feel to it that we're increasing this, and is it just a first-come, first-served basis that and then is there a fail-safe point beyond which density will then exhaust the supply of water projected? In other words, is there any way to get kind of a 30,000-foot view of this thing in terms of, we don't know what's going to be coming down the pipeline, but given the magnitude of this, when is current maximum usage, if we get hit with another project like this or two more? So, in other words, allocating such a large percent of the potential density increase, which is unpredictable, to one project is a concern that I'd like to raise. I don't know if there's an answer for it, but is there a plan? Are there discussions about that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why for the last 15 years, we have been updating our vacant lot and land use study, is to monitor the growth within town, where there are opportunities for changing zoning so that you can concentrate multifamily or higher densities, is pretty much a first come, first serve. Yes, okay. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, the 55 acres that already exists. Part of it is right down the road from this property. Highway 67 is a state highway that can accommodate the concentration of higher densities. So it's not something that we would recommend in the heart of our single-family areas. Mm-hmm. So there are very few corridors that would be able to handle new rooftops, new citizens to our community. So we've got the Stone Ridge Village. Part of those units, they have over 100 units planned that are multifamily just south of here. Jeff Baldwin's property is 42 units south of here. And then the others are located on the south side of Woodland Park or the west side of Woodland Park. And then we've accommodated for some areas also downtown with the Woodland Station. We're not sure whether it's going to build out with the 112 units that we're proposing. So we monitor that very carefully, and if this is 6% of the multifamily area, it can be serviced with the highway, with the water and sewer, and I think this land can carry most of those units. But also, remember, there will be a very rigorous development review of these developments, and we have very good design standards and criteria for development.
So you're not concerned that the highway would be overtaxed?
No. It will. The highway has what's called a draft access control plan that CDOT has initially endorsed, and I did send this request to CDOT. And their comments back was just to ensure that a full traffic study would be done should a development proposal, even a small one, come forward. And that access control plan called for a traffic signal either at Research or at Tamarack Parkway. And again, it just depends upon part of Stone Ridge, its development next to O'Keefe Ceramics is an apartment complex. And if that were to come in, it may trigger the traffic signal.
There could be 2 or 3 signals along there.
Yes, and there is one planned for Kelly's Road and Stone Ridge. In fact, we're holding monies in escrow for that.
So in brief, just following up on the point I made about Kip Wiley's memo, you manage it to the extent that it's possible, and it is on a first-come, first-served basis. So we could exhaust the capacity that is in the system with respect to water taps prematurely, in a sense, if we get a heavy hit on density, high-density usage.
In a sense, but
Okay.
right now, we have a pretty good
Adequate.
handle on it. And we feel that this can be absorbed into the system.
And the concentration factor going from 10% to 20% is not of a concern to anybody.
No.
Okay.
No.
I mean, it is to me, but it's not a major concern. It's just something that kind of, when you did all the math on this, and it's a fairly significant increase, so it kind of caught my eye. Thank you.
Anybody else? I think also on 67, that's also designated to go 4-lane.
It is.
That's part of that as well for that
Yes.
traffic control.
It is.
I think it almost has to. That all
That's a
takes
good
place.
point. Thank you.
In that percentage of going to 10 to 20%, is Trail Ridge already computed into that?
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Because that's already in there as
It's,
well.
yeah, the 168 units is under number 3 is mentioned.
All right.
It's a good point.
Just want to make sure. that-
It hasn't been mentioned, but I assume that there's no vehicular access to 67 from...
There is not. The access control plan does not allow for a secondary access.
Was there any thought given to, I mean, we talk a lot about workforce housing and the need in Woodland Park with all the studies for ability to do that, but is there any concern about concentrating all the workforce housing in Woodland Park in one location? We have this, and then we have across 67 down the road a little bit, another proposed development of multi-units, 40-some, I think, for workforce housing. Has
Mr.
anybody
Watson?
talked about that?
We really don't know what type of units will be proposed here. They could come in with upscale townhomes or
Right.
some patio homes or other
But they could
types.
come with multiple workforce housing,
Yes.
multifamily units.
And that could happen at 67 in Valley View.
Yeah. Well, and they're working on that now.
They are. Yep.
So,
And that could happen in Stone Ridge on the
Correct.
apartment property. It could happen at Mountain Meadows on Morning Sun Drive. There are 36 units associated with that. It could happen at Woodland Station with the type of allocation mixed use that has. There's another small tract, 4 acres, that's actually just north of here in the heart of town.
Right.
That's owned by the Clarks.
I guess there's limits to what can be managed on these things, and we have a dearth of these types of housing available, so I think it's something that I would support. I share your concern because you'd like to have more of a master feel for how this is going to lay out, how it's going to progress, but it's
perhaps
market-based.
better distribution.
Yeah, I mean, if developers see an opportunity and there's agreement with the city and the planning and council, then they would proceed, but you can't predict how that's going to happen in the next 5 to years, so.
With our water tap management program, back in the point on your graph where it was real high, it was 90-some a year. And it got to the point that people there was lotteries involved.
Right.
I remember we did that.
Yeah.
So that that vehicle is still there. So if all of a sudden this ran into a situation where you had a lot of that, then that's going to kick into controlled growth as well.
Here's what we discovered with the lottery approach. We actually had 2 years where we hit the cap, and it was very complicated to ask the builders, are you planning, and this was like in about September or October of each year that we got to 90 units or close 80 units, let's say. There were 10 more left, and the lottery kicked in, and it was very complicated to go out and ask the builders, are you planning on pulling a building permit before December 31st? Because starting January 1st, a whole new allocation of taps came forward. So it was, the utilities director at that time said, it's not too much to ask a builder to wait 6 weeks or 8 weeks until the new set of taps were available. So we did away with the lottery system. And it's a very fair approach. One of the other criteria is that no one builder can pull more than 3 units in a month. So it keeps the small builder like Dan having in the game and being able to still do custom homes.
There's a time frame they have to use it by.
You're required to perfect your water tap within 18 months. And what that means is that you're actually physically tying the house to the system. So you're putting in the service line. However, if somebody is making progress and...
There's some forgiveness.
Yes, there is some flexibility with that.
Sally, with the water and what happened with Paint Pony Water and the city having to take on that burden until things could be fixed, is that in any of these plans should something happen to that water source again?
You know, the city has the capacity to assist on a regular basis. So I think that that is in the plan, and I do have one more slide that I guess I can show you about water. That we're very conscientious and conservative about how we monitor our water. It is a very precious commodity in Woodland Park. So this is a chart that shows the projected build-out of raw water use. This is the bar graph that shows if we were to build out totally, this is the 1,475 acre feet. And if we were to build out, this is the residential, the single-family residential component that would be used in that build-out of 743 acre feet. The commercial portion, commercial is much less than our residential. So the commercial portion is projected to be 208 acre feet. The city portion is all that use for parks, beautification, city hall, all the use that we have as a public common good, water usage. So that's 265 acre feet. And then we've built in a cushion of 359 acre feet. And that cushion is what we see as unpredictable occurrences, that we have some flex in our water planning. So that's just another example of how we look at this very carefully.
And that's the aggregate of all current water resources.
It is, yes.
Doesn't anticipate the need for build-out.
And it also doesn't anticipate if we happen to get some windfall,
right,
some other opportunity to buy more shares, to partner further with City of Colorado Springs. I mean, we don't have our crystal ball to know, but we are conscious of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go back to the aerial for the general public.
Does anybody else have any other questions? If not, we'll move on to open to public comment. Okay. We'll now open the public comment section. The first one to sign up, Bob, L-O-W-N, and I can't make out the rest. What's that?
Bob Lowry.
Lowry. Okay, very good. If you come up, state your address, and come on up here to the podium.
Evening, my name's Bob Lowry. My wife Kathy and I live at 410 Pembroke, which is right across the street from where this new development's going in. First, a comment. The increase from 10 to 20% is of interest to those of us who live in the area where the 10% is going. I have some questions. When we talk about multifamily, we're talking about apartment buildings, right?
It could be townhomes, it could be apartment buildings.
Okay.
Duplexes.
And would somebody please define workforce housing?
Nobody can. It just sounds better than low income.
Bingo. Okay. Well, thank you. There seems to be a bias against.
Well, could I hang on a minute?
Yeah.
You know, we look at the fire department, the police department, a lot of the school teachers, they can't afford housing in Woodland Park. So we've got to do something to get, you know, a $300,000 house is not affordable for our workforce people. So that's what that's looking at,
And
not necessarily low-income housing. But the majority of the firefighters and police department, they live in Colorado Springs. They do not live up here because they can't afford it.
It's an important distinction. Low income is a pejorative term, and it would not, it's important to distinguish between that and what Ms. Probst said. You've got households with, you know, two, quote, professionals, but they're not attorneys and CPAs and things. They have a household income of maybe $50,000, $55,000. They're not going to be able to buy a $300,000 house. So we're looking at trying, I mean, the idea is that there's a need for that. And council has expressed its, you know, general sense of that. And I think some of us would agree with that. So I think that's an important distinction to be
Yes.
made.
And our master plan calls for that.
Okay, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And the family that lived right across the street from us, the husband was a phys ed teacher at the high school. He lived there for a couple of years. They saved up enough for a down payment, and they're now moving into a house.
Great.
When we talk about rental housing, are we counting the houses that are single-family houses? We're not?
No.
Why not?
If I can, it's the houses, it's the units that are located within a multifamily zone. So this is not a rental analysis. This is about the number of units that are located within a distinct zone.
Okay. Well, that is an option, renting a house.
Yes.
And this 30% state average, that's cited as a goal we're supposed to be working toward. Well, why are we working towards a state average?
I don't think we are.
Just a comparison of
It's
where
just
we
a
are.
benchmark to show where we are, that we're actually below it at this point, meaningfully below it. I don't think it's necessarily a goal as far as I know.
Okay. And my last question is, when we talk about these younger professionals that are moving, they're going to be moving in, they're going to be having a lot of kids. Has anybody looked at the impact on the school system?
They would look forward to it. We've been under declining enrollment for year after year with laying off staff. And they would absolutely enjoy to see more children in our system. We got plenty of, the fact that you've been looking at closing one of the elementaries as an option. So that would be an excellent thing.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
I'd like to clarify the 10 to 20%, because remember, I went to an increment. First, it's 10% is what we have right now. If the 55 acres were to develop, that would add another 4%. This 301 units, if it were the maximum density, only represents 6% of that multifamily zoned units.
I also wanted to clarify something to Bob, and I forgot your last name, I apologize. Lowry. This isn't for development, we're just rezoning for opportunity to do something different with the land that's not selling because the market's not asking for it. I just want to make that clear. Nothing's being proposed to be developed at this point, we're just rezoning. Or we're asking to rezone.
The first step, right?
Correct.
Obviously the market is asking for something different than what's available in the land that we have in this area, so that's what we're looking at.
And when we talk about affordable housing, which is a big need in Woodland Park, we're also talking about our seniors and the senior tsunami that's facing us. The state demographer presented to City Council and to us demographics of the future that we're looking at, and we're looking at a lot more seniors looking for affordable places to live. So the market for the 3,000 square foot residence will decline, and the market for something smaller and more manageable for seniors is facing us, and we probably aren't equipped to handle that in Woodland Park.
What the city's been going through is a lack of rental income right now. There's nothing out there. It's now a seller's rental market. In Woodland Park, all the rates, all the homes have all been used up, basically. And we get in semantics on terms, but there's a huge difference between welfare housing, no income, versus the program that like Pete Kuiper has up in Divide, where it's done through tax incentives, and there are income levels. You can't make over so much money to qualify for that. And the end result is a huge tax credit for the person that development. So, but that's all in due time, and that all would come back here. You'd have another opportunity to come in and talk about that, because that would have to go through the same process. This step is just here. We have some people who own some property, and I don't see us building the atomic energy plant out there or anything like that, and it just hasn't sold. And they're just trying to remarket the investment they have out there. And you're worried about the impact in the area, and I understand that. And hopefully with good design and proper restraints or whatever put in there, the end product can be something everybody can live with. That's what I'm hoping is happening. Vicki, come on up and introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
Hi, I'm Vicki Conk, and I live at 3440 Regent Drive. And when Mr. Sharon and his group were doing this a few years back, I was the representative of the Board of Directors for the Reserve at Tamarack. And we went through this whole same process. We had a lot of concerns, and I just want to let you know what our concerns back then were with this development, because basically it's very similar to what it was back then. A lot of extra traffic on Highway 67 is one of the issues. CDOT, yes, they're responsible for Highway 67. However, it is not always well maintained because there's still potholes and everything else on it, and it's narrow, 2 lanes, no passing, and additional traffic will make that a lot worse trying to get into town. The other is with 301 units on 19 acres, the average family is anywhere from 2 to 6. Do the math on that one. That's a lot of people that's going to be into that small area. So that's going to cause a lot of noise, additional noise. The people in the reserve at Tamarack, they have bought their beautiful homes, custom-built homes, because it's a quiet, beautiful, well-maintained neighborhood. And to have a huge amount of noise across the street probably would not be, it would be unacceptable. The other thing is, with that many people, you have a lot of blowing trash. And the people that live in the reserve that back up to Highway 67, I'm sure that they don't want to have to clean up all the trash that's going to blow from the west over into our neighborhood. And that's a big issue. The last time we talked and we worked on this, we agreed to have a permanent fence put across the entire area that backs up to Highway 67. And that fence would be a permanent fence that would not be specifically a wooden fence, because then would they be maintained. Like we do in the reserve, we have to maintain that fence continually, ours. And we had asked that it be a solid fence to help keep the trash on their side of the highway. I guess that's about it. I think that's all.
Thank
But
you.
I just wanted to bring it to your attention. We went through this before, and, we are concerned citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How about folks that haven't signed up that would like to address? Okay, you got your hand up first. Come on up, and then the fellow in the blues after you. Name, address?
Andy Jacobson, my wife.
Oh, wait.
live at 6.
Wait, we get that, yeah.
What, you can't hear me? No.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, the
It's
mic.
got to be recorded. Recording it.
Got
If
it.
you could pull that microphone towards you. Thank you.
It's a height thing. Andy Jacobson, my wife Camilla, and I live at 605 Pembroke, up on the hill, nice view of the peak. We get to hear Highway 67. We built there for the nice quiet, little bit out of town, out of sight. I run a plumbing business from there myself, so I'm coming down 67 back and forth. Construction traffic. Someone mentioned 4 lanes. How long is that going to go on for? Construction traffic, and then all the added traffic from the new homes, apartments, the reflected sound back up onto our nice homes in our neighborhood. Wow, where do I start? Signals, turn lanes. Are those thought in there? And then when the water becomes an issue, is that going to get siphoned off of the golf course, which is a nice visible attribute to our neighborhood? Part of why we built there, a nice golf course. If that turns brown, then property values drop, we leave, then, it's a vicious cycle. And all the commercial, what about all the empty places in town? We should probably fill those. They're already built before we build more, I'm thinking. There's a lot of sale signs already. They should, I'm just thinking out loud here. They should probably be filled up before we build more. Cafe would be great. I'd welcome fixing all their plumbing. Amenities for all these people. I don't think we need any more fast food. It'd be nice to have, some sort of cafes or whatever. What else did I have here? The treatment plant, you mentioned something about having to enlarge that, possibly, more construction traffic on 67. Does the owner of that property or the developer, where does he live? Does he drive this area every day? Does he know the traffic, sound, noise, and volume on holidays? Now? It gets kind of busy. What about fire evacuation? 67 is going to be a madhouse, trying to get all those people out. Anybody thought of that? I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just throwing things out. I guess that's kind of it. Gold Hill has got a lot of empty places, and the turnover on all those businesses. I'm just wondering if we're going to have a whole brand new, beautiful complex of empty businesses. Just throwing that out there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can suggest that we take all the comments and then the applicant can rebut and I can answer some of the questions.
Well, yeah, that's the way it's normally supposed to go, isn't it? Thank you. You're up next.
Hi, my name's Dennis Wilson. I live in the reserve, just up the street from some of these other folks. I guess I look at it a little differently. I think there's not a person in this room who hasn't started their family out in an apartment or some multifamily place, and it's great to have that opportunity to do that. And I think if we make it a welcoming community where they have that opportunity, then all of us aspire to something better in life. So they could be potential people that are going to come along and say, hey, as I save money, as I earn more, as I develop, I want to buy a single-family house. I love this area. I want to stay here. So there's perhaps a longer-term benefit to having those people come in here to see our community, to fall in love with our community, and then want to move up in the housing market. It gives all of us who own single-family homes a boost in our property values. Further, the traffic issue, I mean, coming from what I heard, 40,000 cars a day on average was a number I heard bandied around for 24. It seems like the traffic level on 67 is moot compared to that. And it doesn't take you very long. That's where you are, riding on 24 with 40,000 cars a day versus the traffic on 67. So to me, yeah, it would be a minor inconvenience. Secondly, I heard mentioned there's a lot of vacant office space, buildings, businesses, et cetera. I see businesses shrinking here, not growing. What grows businesses? People. And if we can attract people who, one, work here anyway, they're going to shop here if they can live here. But if they have to commute from other communities to get here, then all that revenue goes elsewhere. It doesn't stay and reside in a community. So I just think there are a lot of benefits to trying to trigger some growth here, even if it is multifamily. The noise issues, I mean, I've lived across from apartment buildings, in a single-family house, and I'm not sure I understand the noise issue. I mean, it seems rather moot to me that, yeah, you can have more families there, but it's not like they're going to be out on the streets rioting. They're going to be living just like the rest of us and going about their business. Most people work during the day, so they're gone. Kids are great to have around, so that's just my comments on my perspective living across the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Name and address.
I'm Tara Berry, and I live at 1005 Parkway Lane. A couple concerns I have, for one, is the traffic flow on Tamarack. Are you going to widen Tamarack? Because you've got, have you ever been there when CSCS has a function going on? There's not even enough parking for the school alone. So you've got wall-to-wall parking on Tamarack, and even for the gym half the time, there's wall-to-wall parking on Tamarack there. Let alone any kind of emergency services that need to come and go from the police station. And you're going to have speeding of people coming down that road into the apartment complexes. The other thing is apartments being right there next to the golf course. We have a nicer end of town. Each side of 67 by the golf course are nicer homes. People move there for a reason, and then you're going to clear cut all those trees and put all these apartments, and then where's the view? Where's the desire for people to come up and golf at our golf course, which is beautifully surrounded by trees? Where's that draw? And that's an asset to Woodland Park that you're going to be hindering. So those are my concerns. Another thing is you're talking about the emergency service people that can't afford to live up here. Well, how about these colleges that are coming in? And they're not paying any taxes. They're not helping our fire department in any way. And then you're going to put in these apartment complexes. And how's our fire department going to be able to accommodate all these people in Woodland Park and get there in a timely manner to help these people? We have one fire department. And our fire department, I hear, goes to Cascade as well. So how is our fire department going to handle all this? So you might have to look at expanding the fire department as well if you're going to have all these people come in, because we obviously have a high fire risk area. So yeah, and if you're going to put low-income housing or what you call workforce housing across the street, if they can hardly afford to live here, how are they going to afford the Christian school that's in that area that you're doting on, and how are they going to afford any kind of golfing? So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Tara. Yes, sir. Same drill.
Hi, my name is Joe Fury. I live at 565 Pembroke in the Tamarack subdivision. I have a comment and a few concerns. One comment is, seems like everybody assumes that we all want to turn Woodland Park into another Colorado Springs. Well, my comment is no, we all don't want to do that. Some of us moved up here so we wouldn't be in a bigger city that had a full spectrum of houses, a full spectrum of shopping, a full spectrum of industry, a full spectrum of jobs. Okay, I live up here, but I drive 45 to 50 minutes to my job every day down the pass in Colorado Springs. And that's, I do my drive, I enjoy it, and I like the situation. I'm not looking for, like I said, a city to be built here in Woodland Park just so I can save 20 minutes of commuting time. Okay, a few of my concerns. I appreciate Andy's concern about when the wildfire comes. I sure hope 67's been at least 4-laned and has turn lanes, because 67 is going to be gridlock, and we're all going to be getting out of our cars and running for our lives. And you add 300 units. Did I hear correctly? Trail Ridge is only 190 units?
168.
168. And I see a lot of apartment units going up there as I drive by. And with the potential for 300 units here, I think I have a big concern about, evacuation. And some of my other concerns include, besides what the other people have said, light pollution. Woodland Park tries to advertise itself as a mountain town, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of regard for washing out the night sky with additional lights. And the city's as bad an offender with those lights on 24 shining up into the night sky. Yeah, I'm also concerned about traffic, additional noise. I mean, yeah, people don't go outside their apartments and scream, but cars make noise. It's going to raise the level of background noise. I'm concerned about where does the 25-foot buffer zone off Highway 67 start? Does it start at the edge of the pavement, or is there already an offset?
Probably from the right-of-way.
Excuse me?
Property line.
Property line.
Property line.
Okay. Does anybody know how far that is off the current pavement?
We'll tell you when we get everybody's comments. Yes,
Okay.
we do.
Okay, well, that's a question I have, because the little square at Tamarack, I forget what you call it, they put in, what I'm trying to say is I don't think 25 feet's enough, okay? The other little developed business center at Tamarack has had, I assume, a buffer, and they clear-cut the existing trees. They planted a few dinky trees, half of which died, and I think that's really going to change the character. And another comment I'd like to make is, when we bought in Tamarack 8-9 years ago, we looked around to see what was around us. Where's the sewer pond? Who lives around us? What's the zoning? And now, and all of us bought our homes, and now you're going to change, the zoning and what we live next to. And I guess the people who own the property in question, they bought it under the current zoning. Is that correct? I assume it is, and assuming that, we bought our properties knowing what the zoning was around us. Now you all want to change that. I think that needs some heavy consideration. I don't think I can come to you and say, hey, I want to change the zoning on my property. I'm going to tear down my house and start a gravel pit. I don't think that would be fair to my neighbors or the town. But anyway, those are some of my concerns.
Joe, thank you. Anybody else?
Evening. My name's Dave Tanis. I live at 590 Pembroke, and I'd like to thank the committee for taking time tonight to hear everybody. I'd like to thank you, Madam Director, for your presentation. Also, is it Mr. Lawrence Shannon? Sharon, thank you for attending tonight and sharing your thoughts on your proposal. A couple of comments, not to have too much repetitiveness, but I think what you've heard tonight from the residents of the Tamarack area is that 67 is extremely well traveled already. You've indicated a 4-lane plan for Highway 67. To share something personally with you, I was waiting to take my 9 and my 11-year-old into Columbine. They attend Columbine. That intersection there between Kelly and 67 in the morning during drop-off time is a period of very high concern. It's a safety concern in my mind. I've personally witnessed an accident there where a family got T-boned by a car attempting to make a left onto Kelly's Road. Additionally, my wife and my 2 children were struck by a car while they were waiting. They were traveling southbound, attempting to make a left onto Kelly's Road. A car in the wintertime slid out, hit my family. My wife's had neck problems and shoulder issues ever since then. So it's of personal concern for me. It's a safety concern about the additional residential load that a multifamily housing development would bring to the community. I also feel, just a question, and maybe you can address this, Madam Director, when you reply to some of these inquiries and concerns, but if I understood you correctly, this would be about 6% of the multifamily housing availability within this area. In my mind, 6% doesn't significantly or materially move the needle on the availability of multifamily housing in this community. You've indicated that there's other multifamily zones already within the community, yet I haven't heard that there's an overwhelming demand to even develop those, unless I've misunderstood. I'm very aware of the multifamily housing development that's occurring down towards, right off 24 on the left as you come into town. But until other multifamily zoned areas were exhausted, it only seems rational to me that we would look to develop those prior to developing an area that is that far north on 67. I won't debate whether or not we need multifamily housing in the community. My major question is, due to the traffic concerns on 67, due to the long distance of walking, as cited in the earlier presentation, if I understand correctly, we're considering rezoning a property that's frankly on the very far north reaches of the community. It would seem to me that it would serve to develop the multifamily zoned areas first, exhaust that before considering a rezone of this particular area. It's quite a long walk back into town. I realize there might be, and there's been a member here that cited an economic benefit, but I'm not sure how many families would necessarily walk into town from the multifamily unit. Of course, they would drive, but then again, that adds to the traffic concerns on 67. And again, I also want to say I share the concerns with noise, such as dumpster doors being slammed in a multifamily unit, the lighting concerns. And the last point for consideration is that the multifamily housing, of course, that would indicate that there would be children. And if I read that correctly, it was landscaping or a privacy fence. I would ask for consideration of, if you choose to go ahead with the rezone. I was thinking more of like a privacy wall, and that's also a security concern. If you have a family living in a multifamily development area, and because we travel 67 frequently, there are fifth wheels all the time going out north on 67. There are ATV trailers all the time traveling north on 67. You cannot stop those vehicles on a dime, as we all know. Therefore, having more of a privacy wall that would accomplish several things. But I think most importantly, if children are playing in that multifamily area, a privacy wall would preclude them from coming out onto 67. I do scouting with my son. Our particular troop has adopted the area from Dr. Yardumian's office right there with Kelly in 67. And just within the last week, we did a road cleanup along 67. We wouldn't let our boys get anywhere close to Highway 67 because of the lack of a shoulder, the high traffic, and frankly, a lot of folks are in a big hurry to get north, and so there's frequent speeding on that particular area. So obviously, you've heard about the noise pollution, the light pollution, the concerns with traffic, the safety concerns. But if you choose to, proceed with the rezoning, please seriously consider a privacy wall, not landscaping or a fence. I would ask that you consider more of a privacy wall. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dave. Anybody else? I don't see anybody else. You sure enough? Okay. We will close the public comment, and we'll go into 7 that will be rebuttal from applicant and Sally's answers after that.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to begin by just reiterating what Mrs. Mattingly said, that I'm not proposing any particular style of housing. I'm just here applying for a zone change. The workforce housing definition is an ambiguous one, and you are correct that it is just a more palatable term than low-income housing. But in our initial impetus for this project, that is exactly who we are going after with workforce housing, is the firefighter, the police officer, the teacher, the entry-level younger professional that can't afford, as you all well aware, the housing prices in this community are a little bit high. As far as traffic on 67 goes, I'm not a highway engineer. CDOT, I've worked with them in the past on a lot of different projects. They seem very competent. Seems to me that a development that would go in if this property were to be rezoned and a multifamily capability would almost 100% guarantee a traffic light that would have to occur at the Tech Park Drive or Tamarack Parkway, or potentially both. That's going to lower the speed limit in the area. The speed limit there, Sally, is currently 45 or 50?
50.
It's 50. So if there was another signal there and one at Kelly's Road, CDOT will lower the speed limits. So you're not going to have people flying and unable to control stopping vehicles laden down with trailers, etc., to such an extent. I believe that if done correctly, and this would be, again, at the development site plan review stage, a landscape buffer, a combination with a wall or a fence, I think would adequately suffice to soften the appearance. I was involved with the Tamarack Business Center in a peripheral way, and that screening was not ideal. I'm aware of that. The then city planner, Joe Napoleon at the time, mandated that we plant a lot of aspen trees, which we didn't like the idea of because, it's not an ideal tree for landscaping, but it's not a screening tree because it doesn't have any leaves in the winter, whereas a blue spruce, Engelmann, Doug fir, et cetera, a little bit more appropriate. So I'm no longer involved with that project, but I can completely appreciate the comment. One gentleman brought up the sewage treatment plant expansion. It was my understanding that is occurring anyway. That's not this project, or any project that may happen would not trigger that. I live in Colorado Springs. That's where I live. I moved to Colorado in 1997, commuted from Colorado Springs to Woodland Park for 15 years. I was part of the partnership that restored the old library and converted it into an office space that's now owned by True West Realty. I'm not sure what blowing trash refers to. I'm guessing that's at the construction phase of things. I'm hoping that that's what that's referring to. That would be a temporary concern, and yes, all construction sites, especially in Colorado where it's windy, you do have that concern. Is it Mrs. Compt? We did have meetings 4 years ago to discuss this, and I remember them very well. And the reason I did not continue that process at this stage is because back then I was going to act as the master developer on the project, and it is my intention now not to continue on in such a capacity. If I'm approached by the right party that would like to joint venture a project, I might get back into it, but it is our intention as myself and the rest of my business partners is to try to achieve a rezoning and then try to sell the parcels off to various third parties to handle the development.
You were talking about the trash. It's not just during construction. It's an ongoing because people who rent don't normally go out and pick up each piece of paper in their yard.
Okay. I'm not going to be able to speak to that knowledgeably. Speeding into the apartments, I'm not sure what to make of that one either. And then as far as removing the trees, again, that's going to go to the development and a site plan issue, and that's going to be subject to staff. I have no intention to remove any trees with this part of the project. And again, lighting, I do development in other parts of the country, and I'm a big fan of full cutoff, downcast luminaires to mitigate light pollution as much as possible. That's all that I have. Thank you.
Any questions for him? Okay, thank you.
I think Lawrence covered most everything, but Mr. Fury had a specific question about the width of the Highway 67. The right-of-way from the center of the double yellow line, there is 66 feet from that center line to the west. To the east, on the Tamarack side, it is less than 66 feet because a portion of that was under litigation. So the side where the Centennial Trail is, that basically is what it is to your fence, but there is 66 feet from that center line to the west. So there's quite a bit of shoulder there that could accommodate either a widening and buffers.
So the highway wouldn't affect the trail?
No. And Lawrence alluded to the Tamarack Business Center. There was no buffer requirement. The top of their wall is pretty much on that right-of-way line. There's very little private property between the highway right-of-way and their parking lot. In fact, it's right about on the parking lot. In fact, if signs get put in that area, the highway department snatches them up pretty quickly. So those were the two things that I noticed were not touched.
Any more questions? Anybody have any questions for planning or anybody?
Sally, if I could just, in my mind, get, that land is currently zoned how?
Heavy service, commercial, light industrial.
And how long has that been zoned to that?
Good question. This property was in Teller County up until 1999, and then it was annexed into the city, and it was in 99 that it was zoned heavy service, commercial, light industrial.
So any of those residents that are in across the highway could have found out that that was a commercial zoned property?
Correct. And just a clarification, this is light industrial, not heavy industrial. And I specified or gave examples of 2 light industrial operations right now in the city. Sturman Industries is one, and their property is slated for over thousands, tens of thousands of square feet of research and development and light industrial there. And then the other is O'Keefe Ceramics. And in front of O'Keefe Ceramics, right on Highway 67, is another small parcel of land that's zoned heavy service commercial light industrial. Let's see. I also, the chair did mention adult entertainment being allowed in heavy service commercial light industrial. I went back to our standards, and it would not work in this area at all because it has to have a 200-foot separation from schools. So none of these properties would qualify for that if it were rezoned the way it's proposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, at this point, we need to talk about it among ourselves, debate it, express any opinions to what we've heard tonight.
I'd just like to say thanks to everybody that came in and shared your thoughts about possible development in the area. We sure appreciate that, and just a reminder that we are either approving or not approving the zoning, and if it's approved, all of that can be considered as developers come in, if developers come in and make that decision. So this isn't a, I guess, final. It's not going to affect any of your concerns today, I guess, is what I was trying to spit out. But we certainly appreciate it and respect that. So thank you. No, we've closed the public at this point. So that's all I had to say, John. Just thanks. I'm good.
Dan, anything? Steve? Jeff?
Yeah. You don't regularly come before the Planning Commission, but I guess what I would say to you, as Paula mentioned, we don't have a development in front of us right now. We just have a zoning action. I've been on the commission for a couple of years now, and I guess I would strive to assure you that when the development proposal comes before this commission, it goes through a really rigorous process, and I think my colleagues would agree that we bend over backwards to try and accommodate all the concerns on any given development. So I think a lot of people have visions when we hear workforce housing, affordable housing of kind of a tenement operation that breeds bad things, and I suspect that we would not allow that sort of development in this area. To my colleagues, this conforms to the plan. You may not be aware of it, but the city has been struggling over several years now. We've done 2006 and 2011 housing studies. We've talked to state demographers, and there is a great need in Woodland Park for some diversity in the housing. Our plan calls for that. It has been made very clear to us in these studies that we are at a deficit for affordable housing for many of our professionals, young professionals. There is an understanding that we would like to have our teachers be committed to the community that they teach in, as opposed to the community that they commute from. And according to the plan, this provides options. There's nothing specific here tonight, but it provides options to meet the objectives of our city's master plan or comprehensive plan. So I guess I would support the rezoning. I think whatever we would agree to put in there. The other thing is that in Woodland Park, development is a market-driven operation. It's not a planned community in the sense that we control what goes where or what developer can compete for a particular property. We're very very capitalistic in that sense. So in response to the question, why don't we develop the other multifamily units before we rezone this one? We don't have the option of doing that. I mean, it's up to the market to do that. So to my colleagues, I would say that I support it. It seems to me that whatever would go in there would be preferable to heavy commercial light industry to its neighbors. When you're talking about noise and traffic and trash and that sort of thing. So,
thank you.
I support it.
And I was going to underscore that point, Jeff, that some of my comments were related to the management and kind of the large-scale plan in the next X number of years and the limits of that with respect to density. And it is on a first-come, first-served basis based on market demand, over which we have no control. So if you look at our master plan and you begin going through it, you see those are the terms and requirements with which any prospective developer would have to comply, and they're very, very explicit. And they provide a lot of safeguards for neighbors and inputs taken very carefully. But we can't control what comes to us in terms of development proposals, so those are taken separately. Part of me wishes we had better control over that, but we don't, and I think there's a reason for it, and it goes back to what Jeff said, and that is the capitalist nature of the enterprise that most American cities work with. What comes to them is based on demand and the risks associated with it. So I would also support this rezoning.
If I may, I moved here in 1983 into Sunnywood. I have seen the growth of Woodland Park. And I get Highway 67. I used to have to drive it all the time. But there's really not a lot of area for it to go. It has to go north right now. I support them that it's a what-if situation, but he wants to be able to sell his land. If he can sell his land based on the rezoning, then that's what needs to be done. So I would support it.
Sally, would you read the two motions you're looking for?
The first motion states, move to recommend approval of
It's on the last page.
Tamarack Tech Park filing number 5, vacation and replat, including approval of a variance for lots 2, 3, and 4 that do not have a minimum 50-foot frontage, and for lot 5 that does not have a 40-foot frontage on a public right-of-way. Prior to recording the final plat, it shall be amended to include, first, the following minor corrections. Remove the water availability disclaimer, note number 5, which is redundant. They have that on the plat twice. That's the water guarantee disclaimer. Change master plan to comprehensive plan in the water availability disclaimer. Within the easements description, remove the word private before the word drainage. Within the certificate of approval, add the words "and drainage" after the word utility. And on page 2, add the word drainage to any label that refers to utility easements. And number 2, add a 25-foot landscaping and/or fence buffer to lots 6 and 7 adjacent to Highway 67. Then for agenda item 4D, move to recommend approval of the rezoning request as proposed.
Do I have them? motion for the first
I
one
would
that
make a
Sally
mo-
read.
I would make a motion on the first.
I need a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
Watson,
Yes.
this is on the subdivision.
Yes.
Thank you. Mattingly,
Yes.
Mella,
Yes.
Probst,
Yes.
Stannard,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
and DeVoe.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Then I would make the motion for the second.
Everybody understand the second?
Second.
Which is the
Mr. Watson
25-foot.
seconds it.
No, that,
It's just the.
it would
zoning
be
of the
for
other
the
lots.
zone.
Sorry.
You're talking about item 4D,
Yes.
the case that's
The
002.
subdivision had two conditions.
Right.
Sorry. So I would make a motion on 4D.
Okay.
I'll second
Okay. Mattingly,
Yes.
Mella,
Yes.
Probst,
Yes.
Stannard,
Yes.
Vogel,
that. Yes.
DeVoe,
Yes.
and Watson.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
This case will move forward to the city council, so we would invite you to come back. They will have the first reading on August 7th, and then it is not going to be a public hearing until September 4th. So September 4th will be the next opportunity for you to be able to speak before the city council.
The first reading just puts it on the record. Nothing's done. Second reading is the one where it'll be a public hearing, just like we had tonight.
Thank you so much.
And this one's tabled.
Item E, CPU 14-004, Lachina Automotive.
Well, our applicant actually is requesting that we table this one as well to the next meeting, which is August 14th, 2014. And the reason for this is simply they are absent and they would like to be present, and I think we've had a long night this evening as well. So that is the request, is to table it to the 14th of August.
Need a motion to accept the table?
I motion to accept the table.
I'll
Second.
Plenty of vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Take your pick.
Hope those guys didn't.
Okay, let's move on to reports. As chairman, I have none.
They could have just.
Does any of you folks have any
We should have
reports?
done that before.
Bill,
No, sir.
any report?
Got your
The good of the... Sally?
Just that we'll have the two cases at our next meeting, so
We have refreshments after.
After what?
Tonight.
Tonight we have
Tonight.
refreshment?
She told she'd bring cookies, and I brought something to drink.
Oh, you did?
To adjourn.
I got a milkshake at Sonic before I came. And I got out of the car,
Motion to
the kid hadn't put the
Second.
milkshake all over my
Oh, geez. Oh.
car. Kid didn't put the top on the
Should someone go get Mr. Schroeder and Mr.
Oh, I know.
He's sleeping in the back.
Probably are.
Do you have
Sally,
do you have cots set
have
up?
there been any permit applications for Masters Drive?
not yet.
Yeah,
But
Next to
you
us.
have a new neighbor.
Busy.
We have a new,
Closing the highway.
they surveyed.
Oh,
Yeah, Brian
We need
King.
to
I heard it.
Can you get it?
No.
It's